Hello guys, this is 6 Damage Heal here, and this past weekend was just a sneak peek for the extra booster of Conroe and Nova Grapplers, I believe. But we're not focusing on the Nova Grapplers today, that's another video. But today we're actually going to do a deck list of the Grade 4 on Conroe. So Conroe, Dragons, Grade 4, deck list, let's do it. Okay, so first, the main star of the deck is the new Grade 4 for Conroe, Nouvelle Vague, or his full name is Transcendence Dragon, Dragonic, Nouvelle Vague. This guy is probably one of the most highly anticipated, hyped cards in probably like the history of the game. At least one of them. So, his ability, which he deserves to be because of his awesome great ability. So, his first ability is that he's a silent top. So, your opponent can only use grade 1s to actually guard against him. That's good because, they can't use grade 0s. So in order to effectively guard against him, they have to use perfect guards. And if they don't have a perfect guard, or they run out, which happens to be the case most of the time, they'll end up dropping 4 or 5 5k shields to guard instead of 2 10k shields. Or maybe a 10 and a 5. So they really have to drop a lot of cards from their hand, which is really, really big. So that's really good. His second ability is probably the most scariest one, and why people actually like him. It reduces the luck factor of the game. It's the ability of, during your turn, your opponent's trigger effects, I guess when it attacks, or when you attack, your opponent's trigger effects that happen during damage check cannot activate. So there is no reviving from 6 damage healing, which saddens me because that's the name of our channel. There's no drawing from draw triggers, which is very important in like critical times to, have an extra card to guard with. And there's not, like, let's say you even get a critical trigger to give your Vanguard a boost, you can't even do that. So that's probably why he's so sought after, because the trigger effects one. His third ability is actually the Limit Break. Its Limit Break is Persona Blast 1, which is another copy of himself in your hand, Counter Blast 3, and Soul Blast 3, and you get to retire every unit on your opponent's side of the field, other than the Vanguard, of course, but retire all the rear guards. Now, I'm not even going to start to say how great and awesome a -5 would be. Like, popping 5 cards on your opponent's side of the field, even during mid-game or late game, is like, it's so difficult to come back from. I don't care what deck you're playing. If you're playing Battle Sisters or you have a huge cards in like a lot of cards in your hand, if you get -5 that late in the game or even at all, it's very, very difficult to come back from, especially when you can't use grade 1s to guard. So that's really good. You don't end up using his Limit Break too much, honestly, because it is such a steep cost and it is sort of difficult to use with the Persona Blast and stuff. But it's just nice to have, honestly. So, yeah, that's also good. And its last ability is, if it's placed in the rear guard circle, it loses 1k. So it's a 12k attacker. The reason they didn't leave it 13k, I presume, is that you could just put Bahr behind him and make it easier to get 21k columns. So they did that so it would be 20k column when Bahr is there, so you can't really do that. Okay, so that's enough for the grade 4, which we used 4 Nouvelle Vagues. The second is, well, now on to our grade 3s, 4 Dauntless Drive Dragons. Dauntless Drive Dragons, the break ride of the deck. It's definitely, it might even be more expensive than Nouvelle Vague by the time Nouvelle Vague comes out. But it's the break ride for Conroe right now. Its ability is, when the card that rides over him, after that card attacks, you discard 3 Conroe units from your hand, after it attacks, of course, and the card restands again, as well as it gains 10,000 from the break ride effect. That mixed in combination with Nouvelle Vague, where they can't use grade 1s to guard you. Well, my bad, they can't use grade 0s to guard you, and they have to use perfect guards to guard you. And also, where they can't get trigger effects from your attack, that's really big, and it's really scary. Like, if you're at 4 damage when that break ride occurs, you're gonna have to hope and pray they don't get a critical at least one time, because in order to effectively guard the attack, you need 2 perfect guards, which a lot of people don't want to waste so early in the game. So, I mean, not so early. Don't want to waste too often, so that's very difficult. It's very scary, and the most scary thing is like, if you get critted when you're at 4, you can't even hope for a heal. So that's what's really scary. And Dauntless Drive is the only other. I mean, I see some people put in Cruel Dragon at times. I guess that can be okay, but really you just need 4 Dauntless Drive dragons. You don't need any other Kagero grade 3 other than Dauntless Drive. Now it's pretty expensive, but that's just the way it works. On to the grade 2s. For grade 2s, we actually use 11 here, standard 11. The first grade 2 is 4 Nouvellecritic or Nouvellecritic. I don't know how to say it. Nouvellecritic Dragon. That's the grade 2 where when it's placed, it comes in the extra booster as well. When it's placed on the rearguard circle, you get to, if you have a Nouvelle Vague in your hand and you show it to your opponent, you get to counterblast 1 and retire a unit on the field. That's just really efficient, and it makes the deck so much more like meta-worthy because of the efficient of just counterblasting 1 to retire something on the field. It's what makes Revenger so good because it's so cost efficient to retire something, just 1 counterblast. But now it's in a Kagero form, and it's not just the front row with Blaster Dragon Dorn. It's just any retire any unit. So that's what makes Nouvellecritic is really good because it just makes the deck efficient and non-counterblast heavy, which is, well, not as counterblast heavy as it can be. So you definitely need to run 4 of him. He's the one you definitely need to. Next, we use 3 Berserk Dragons. Berserk Dragon is the Blaster Blade, Dragonic Death Scythe, you know, the guy where you counterblast 2, retire a grade 2 or lower unit on your opponent's side of the field, which can be front row or back row. He's good because, let's say you don't have a Nouvelle Vague in your hand when you have Nouvellecritic or Nouvellecritic, you can retire something as well early game, which is very important. Because you want, this deck isn't Raging Form or like Tetra Drive or even Descendant, where in 1 turn it can just totally flip the script. No. This deck is more like Chaos Breaker, where you slowly but surely grind games out until they just don't have any resources anymore. So he's really important to minus them to slow Berserk Dragon. He's really good to minus them early game to slow them down so you can get into a long game, which you want it to be. Because the longer the game goes in this deck, the more it favors you. So I preferred 3 Berserk Dragon. And one thing is it's with Nouvellecritic and Berserk Dragon, the deck can be fairly counterblast-ish, counterblast heavy. So that's why we run 4 Bellicosity Dragons. He's the damage and flipper for Kagero, and he just makes the deck even more efficient because you're always going to want to use your counterblast, whether for Nouvelle Vague, Nouvellecritic, and Berserk Dragon. Even Conroe uses a counterblast, and Gattling Claw Dragon, the trigger that we're going to use, that uses a counterblast. So you definitely want to be able to get your damage unflipped after using them. So he's really important, so that's why I use 4 of him. I was thinking about running Nahalem, the 10k vanilla, but it just, the damage unflipping was more important than the early game like stall, the early game defense that I would use for Nahalem. So I definitely chose to use Bellicosity, the damage unflipper, instead. Yeah, that's my reasoning for that. So I use 4 of him. On to the grade 1s, we end up using 14 grade 1s, standard as well. The first 4 is the key consistent piece of the deck. 4 Nouvelleroman, or Nouvelleroman, I don't know how to pronounce it. His ability is when he's placed on the rearguard circle, you can show a Nouvelle Vague from your hand, put it on top of your deck, search your deck for a grade 3, and then shuffle your deck. He just automatically makes the deck a ton more consistent. You know, the main weakness, I guess, of this deck would be the consistency riding from 1 to 4, because, you know, from 3 to 4, you only run 4 grade 3s, so you really need that consistency, which is very difficult, fairly difficult. I mean, how many times do you non-break ride in your decks? It happens a lot. So that's why you have to run 4 of him. He is the main star of the deck. He makes the deck consistent and definitely meta-worthy. And he is just very good, very consistent, so you definitely need 4 of him. And also with our starter Conroe that we're going to be having, you can literally get him turn 2, your second turn, no matter where you play, what turn you play, because you just counterblast 1, put Conroe into the drop zone, and then you just search him out from your deck if you have the Nouvelle Vague in your hand, and bam, you get the grade 3, and everything's dandy and fine. So that's why we definitely need 4 of him, no less, because he really makes a deck very consistent. I can't stress that enough. Next we use 3 of the 8K vanilla Bahr, the Embodiment of Armor Bahr. The reason why we use him is that you place him either behind Dauntless or Nouvelle Vague and it makes a 21K column. Dauntless, he needs you to have more rear guards for it to get the 2K to be able to hit cross rides. But if you do have more rear guards and you have the Bahr behind him, he definitely gets the 21K column, which is very important. Whether it's early game, mid game, late game, you definitely want that 21K rear guard, Vanguard attacking Vanguard. So that's very important. And yeah, you definitely want to put him behind the Vanguard. And also, I guess, turn 1 defense if you really want to. But this deck is really tends to be aggressive more. So you really want to have Bahr behind there. And the other one is 3 Dragonite Ashgar. We have him because, well, first of all, he's the personal booster of Nouvelle Vague. He's 7K base, where he gets 3K attack when he boosts a Nouvelle Vague. He's very good just having a Nouvelle Vague in the rear guard. Now, obviously you want him as a Vanguard, but you run 4 Nouvelle Vague. And a lot of times you don't have enough counterblast to use this effect. So it's really nice if you have him as a rear guard, as a 12K attacker. When you put Dragonic Ashgar behind him as his own personal booster, he becomes a 22K column. Now, Nouvelle Vague doesn't allow your opponent to use grade 0s when guarding him. So it's fairly difficult, like when they drop their hand to guard Nouvelle Vague, it's very difficult to then drop even more of their hand to stop at least a 22K column without any triggers. So that's why we run 3 Dragon Ashgar. And also, Ashgar is very flexible. Like, the reason why I like him as a personal booster as opposed to other personal boosters is that he's 7K base. So you can put it behind Bellicosity, Berserk Dragon, Nouvellecritic one, and for 16K column. So that's why we run 3 of him. He's very flexible, and he's very good. So that's why we run 3 of him. Next, we run 4 Perfect Guards. We run Perfect Guards just because they're great. You know, with Gauntlet Buster and Raging Form and all these great attackers, you definitely need to run Perfect Guards. So having anything less than 4 Perfect Guards is you're just really opening yourself to get like 1 turn killed with all these decks out there. So you definitely need it. For aesthetic purposes, you could run Maria because I'm not gonna lie, she looks really awesome. A dragon dancer just dancing in the hellfire, you know, that's really cool. She looks awesome, so run Maria. If you want to do cost-wise, run Barri. I mean, Barri still, I prefer Barri better, but, you know, it depends on how you want to view the card, I guess, which matters to some people. I decided not to run Gojo in this deck. I know a lot of people tend to run Gojo. The thing is, I'd really only have space for 2 Gojo, maybe take out, you know, a Bahr and stuff, like, take out 2 Bahrs and run 4 of the Dragon at Ashgar and run 2 Gojos instead. I understand if you're really that crazy about consistency, but you really don't need it, and also you definitely want to get, for me at least, you just get the consistency from Conroe and the Nouvelleroman Dragon. That's where the consistency comes from in the deck. Gojo, he's okay early game, but we only run 2. I'd only be able to fit 2 of him, so that's why. And plus, I'd rather just attack with stuff instead of have, you know, rest him, discard and draw. So that's why I don't really do Gojo too much. But I understand. It's just this deck's more aggressive and rearguard based, where you want the rearguards to hit for high numbers as well as the Vanguard. So that's why I didn't have space for Gojo. So that's the only reason why. But I understand if you want to put him in. On to the grade 0s with our starter Conroe. He's the best starter for this deck. They actually banned him in Japan because he was making the deck really consistent. His ability is you counterblast 1, put him into the drop zone, search your deck for a grade 1, which most of the time you're going to want to search for a Nouvelleroman in order to get that grade 3 Dauntless into your hand if you have a grade 4 Nouvelle Vague. So that's the usual combo you go for. At times you could, I guess, add a perfect guard, but really, if you already have those two in your hand, or if you're already set for your grades riding in the 1, from 0 to 1, 1 to 2, 2 to 3, and 3 to 4. So I guess you could get that, but Conroe is just the toolbox of the deck. You can't play another starter in this deck other than him for now. When he does get banned, or if he gets banned, you play Red Pulse Dracokid, the grade 3/4 searcher. But for now, Conroe is king, and you definitely, highly recommend you run Conroe instead. Our trigger lineup is 8 criticals. It really doesn't matter what critical. I prefer the Blu-ray Dracokid and Embodiment of the Spear Tahr because they look cool. But the crits doesn't matter. Just run 8 of them because it is an aggressive deck, and when you check a crit, when your opponent's at 4 damage, when you have Nouvelle Vague, they really can't do anything because if they heal, it sucks for them. So you definitely want to get the critical trigger, and it's just awesome. We run 4 draw. The draws are Gattling Claw Dragon. His ability is when you put him, counterblast 1, put him into the soul, retire a grade 0 on your opponent's side of the field. That's really good at not only early game, because you get to retire their starter, but a lot of decks now are running 2 grade 0s. For example, Nubatama runs that Kuroko person guy ninja thing. They run 2 of her because she's really important to the deck. So even late game, you can pop a Kuroko, and that's really good because now your cards being bind doesn't really matter. And also Revengers tend to use 2 grade 0s with Dark Goat and Claudus. They prefer that. So that's why you definitely want Gattling Claw Dragon instead of the other Seal Dragon one that gives 3k. So that's my preference, and that's what I recommend. And then last, we have 4 heal triggers because we'd like to heal. I mean, yeah, you just have to run heal triggers just to give yourself that opportunity to heal and to really come back from damage situations, I guess. So definitely 4 heals. Yeah, I decided not to do 6 draws and 6 crits just because I really wanted to stress getting the crits and to make, you know, my opponent be in very tough situations where they have to guard with their 1s against Nouvelle Vague. Yeah, so thank you guys. If you have any other questions about my deck list, just comment below. Well, please like and subscribe, and thank you for watching.